Now, I want to pivot for a moment here to talk about another piece of news that you wrote about last week. You wrote about OpenAI's 5.4 or GPT 5.4 model and the new release of it. You actually came out ahead of time and said that it was coming out. It came out on Friday. What is different about GPT 5.4, Stephanie?
So GPT 5.4 really just kind of continues OpenAI's trend of making its models more useful for the sort of real work that knowledge workers are doing. So for instance, OpenAI really highlighted in this latest model that it's much better at working with things like spreadsheets, presentations, and documents, which you could easily imagine why that would be so useful for people working in finance or investment bankers, those sorts of folks. There's also a new X high is what they're calling it, reasoning setting, where the model can basically spend even more time and tokens kind of thinking about super tough problems to get those answers right, which is something that we broke in our newsletter days before the release.
So it sounds like this is very much the model that is continuing to go head to head against Anthropic with we hear this term knowledge work come up. I mean, this is really like the white collar work that Anthropic has really gotten a lot of traction with its integration with Microsoft, with the Office suite. We've heard about Aaron Holmes reporting with PowerPoint, stuff like that. We obviously know the coding. So this is very much an answer to that, it seems like.
Yeah, as we've seen, obviously OpenAI and ChatGPT has really been the breakout star with consumers, but we've seen in recent months, OpenAI is really emphasizing wanting to work more with enterprises too, which is what, as you mentioned, Anthropic is really focused on. So they're really trying to compete with the Anthropic models in that way to make sure that they can, OpenAI models can work well with spreadsheets and presentations. And just a couple weeks back, we saw a similar announcement from Anthropic announcing specialized, features and models for people working in finance too. So it's very much like this very tight race between the two companies and a lot of back and forth in terms of, one company making an update or announcing a new feature one week that will make it better for knowledge workers, and then you see the other company kind of doing the same maybe a couple weeks later.
Any initial reactions from folks? Are they liking it?
Yeah, it seems like overall developers are pretty pleased. It seems like people think overall it's more intelligent, it's a lot faster, which is always a good thing with these sorts of models. I do think though that like generally the developer reaction to these new models have been kind of it's been more muted than in the past because companies like OpenAI and Anthropic have moved to this sort of like once a month model update where it's at this point it's kind of smaller tweaks and smaller updates to the models every time they come out with a new version. So because of that, like there's not these like giant jumps in capability that you would see kind of written about in like tons of news stories, and it kind of just feels like developers are just switching to whatever model is newest. So there's no like loyalty really to any specific model developer.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like making a big press release about an Apple software update at some point. It's like I feel like that's the direction that we're going in. Um, but as we know, at one point, I mean, they were keynotes around new models, and so maybe the
Exactly.
days of those keynotes are long gone. But a new model that I do want to ask you about is you wrote last week also about a bidirectional model that OpenAI is working on, and this is specifically to do with the audio models that it's developing. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so I need to give a little bit of backdrop here. As you mentioned, this is an audio model, and audio models are really interesting because for a while they were kind of like the black sheep, I guess, of AI, or kind of like the forgotten child. Like, not a ton of money and effort was going into it, but especially in the last year or so, we've seen audio models become increasingly more important, and lots of AI researchers are talking about them a lot more. And essentially, that's because a lot of people are kind of hypothesizing that audio models, which is when you kind of talk to the AI out loud, like the way humans do with each other, is a more natural way to interact with AI and is a lot, easier than having to, text out like every single thought that you have to a chatbot. The issue is that today audio models are kind of trailing behind text-based models in terms of just how intelligent they are, just their general capabilities. But one issue here that's really important is that audio models today don't feel very natural to talk to. So you might have noticed when you turn on advanced voice mode in ChatGPT, for instance, and you're talking to it, if you try to interrupt the model or even just say something like, yeah, just to like indicate that you're listening, the model will just kind of completely stop talking, like pause for a second. It might get confused. It might ask you to repeat yourself. It is kind of like will create this very unnatural kind of environment, I guess, for you to kind of be talking to this model in. So OpenAI's bidirectional model, or BiDi for short, is really kind of going after that specific issue. So this model is real time, which means that it's always kind of processing audio even while it's talking to you. So in this case, if you do interrupt the BiDi model kind of mid sentence, it will not pause, but it will instead be listening to you and updating its answer in real time. So you can kind of imagine why that would be really important for a bunch of use cases, but like customer support, for instance, like let's say you're on the phone trying to return some clothing. Mid conversation, you decide you want to exchange sizes instead. You can interrupt the voice agent now, and it will just naturally kind of respond to you and be like, okay, sure, yeah, here's actually the button that you press to do that instead. A much more natural kind of conversation.
So basically what I'm hearing from you is I mean, the audio models here, one of the things that they have difficulty with is when you interrupt the device or the person to confirm what you're saying. Same way I do with you, it's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
mhm,
So like
yeah."
literally like what we just did, like where I said,
What
yeah,
we just did, and so the model cannot handle that, and so this new model will hope to rectify that, and I imagine, I mean, this will become more important as OpenAI looks to build out its hardware ambitions, and, you reported on this, smart speaker-esque device that, the company is looking to launch. I mean, you gotta be able to handle those "yeahs" and "uh-huhs."
exactly. Yeah, that's actually the smart speaker and the device work that OpenAI has been doing was actually, one of the main catalysts for them like really ramping up work on the audio models and on this bidirectional model specifically because, as you're saying, if you're talking out loud to your assistant, it's going to be really awkward if you have to like wait for the assistant to finish rambling on every time you want to ask it something and you can't even say like yeah or, kind of just acknowledge what it's saying while it's talking. So you just kind of want it to feel more like you're having a conversation with a human rather than like this robot that we're used to whenever you like call customer support.
And where is this model at in terms of progress? Do we know about when it's gonna be released at all?
So it seems like it's still pretty early. I think originally OpenAI was aiming for a Q1 release, but it seems more and more likely that that will probably get pushed to the second quarter of this year. It does seem pretty early in that people I talked to for the story said that the longer you talk to this model, maybe it works really well for the first couple minutes, but after, several minutes of talking to it, it will start glitching or kind of speaking in these weird, like abnormal robotic voices. So it's definitely still a work in progress, but I think it's one that, a lot of us are really excited to test out, hopefully when it comes out in the next couple months.
Great. Well, Stephanie, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Stephanie Palazzolo, our AI reporter here at The Information.